again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, and mentor, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm good. It's good to be with you again, and I love recording, and I love the
Yeah,
visiting we get to do prior to recording.
yeah. Sometimes even during recording. It sounds like
Yes,
we're
that's
working,
true.
but we're right on. Well, hey, 223 was a mind blower. Good luck topping that one. But I'm just saying, 224. If you have the chance of upping 223, it's this one. You are a huge proponent of rhythms. I know you are, and it makes sense.
Mhm.
We talk about money. Well, we all talk about budgets. We talk about calendars, and all of a sudden, it's a free for all. I think we understand the value of a dollar, but we often don't understand the value of a minute or an hour. So
Right.
I look forward to this. Give us kind of a I don't know what you call it, an appetizer of what we're about to eat here today.
Sure. On the podcast, Jim, in the past, we've talked about work rest rhythms multiple
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
We've been podcasting. Can you believe we've been podcasting over 4 years? Uh,
No.
yes, I
Oh,
just can't believe that. And
I remember we both had thick heads of dark hair when we started, wasn't it? That was not
that's not true. You maybe, but not me. And if you've listened to the podcast, you're familiar with the four rhythms that we've kind of
yeah,
had a steady drumbeat about. The daily rhythm where we put
yeah,
hard edges on our workday.
yeah,
And Genesis 1, uh, after this burst of creative activity, it says, and then it was evening.
yeah,
There's this divine pause
yeah,
every day, and that rhythm has to do with pivoting from work to your personal life. We've
yes,
talked at length about the weekly rhythm. And in Genesis chapter 2, it says that God made the seventh day different. He
yeah,
made it separate. He made it holy.
yeah,
And so we've talked about that, the power of a weekly pause, a
yeah,
Sabbath, and its regenerative work in
yeah,
our life. That work of reminding ourselves every week that this is not my baby, this is God's, and
yeah,
and God can get more done in my life in 6 days than he
yeah,
can get done in seven.
yeah,
Uh, we talked about a quarterly rhythm where every 90 days it's just good to get out of your zip code, spend a
yeah,
couple hours or a
yeah,
half day or a full day, just doing something
yeah,
that is not at your house. It is away so
yeah.
that you can just check out and read and tune into something life-giving
Right.
uh, every 90 days. And then we talked about a fourth rhythm, a real vacation every year. We've
Yeah,
gone on and on about this. Like, if you're a pastor reading leadership books on vacation, not a real vacation, answering emails, not a real vacation,
yeah,
uh, working on messages, that's not a real vacation. Having a legitimate
yeah,
week, 2 weeks where you disconnect from work
yeah,
and you give yourself to rest and refueling and replenishing
yeah,
activity. So we've talked about that a ton, uh,
yeah.
but it's just been recently that I've rediscovered a fifth rhythm.
Okay.
And this one's a little trickier than the first four. Those first four, I think, we can tie it to calendar and
Yeah.
like there's a logical sequence in our mind. This fifth one, Jim, here it is. It's capacity. Let me put it this way. It's our capacity versus the demand on
Mhm.
our capacity. And it's
Mm.
a harder rhythm
Yeah.
because it's really hard to accurately measure how much I have in the tank versus how much I'm expending,
Yeah.
how much energy I have versus how much energy is coming out of me.
Right.
A 40-hour week of routine tasks is not the same as a 40-hour week filled with high demand tasks.
Yes.
And I can fool myself into thinking that my capacity versus the demand on my capacity is simply a matter of hours
Yeah.
spent working. No, in
Not at
reality,
all.
Jim, it's a matter of what those hours consist of. And it's
Yes.
highly individualized, right?
Yeah.
Because what's draining for me, things that they expend a ton of energy for me might not be the same for you. So
Yeah.
this is where we really have to discover and know ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I know for me, travel is high demand.
Okay.
When I'm not in my own bed, when it's work related, I'm not in my own bed. I'm crammed into an airplane with people all around me, and I'm running through airports, and all of that. That is high demand. Um, Believe it or not, speaking is high demand on
Sure.
me.
Oh, yeah.
I expend a ton of energy. I
Yeah.
know I do that. I wear my Fitbit when I preach,
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
track my heart rate being up for
Yeah.
30 minutes, and I expend a lot of energy. And
Yeah.
so if you speak multiple times on a Sunday and multiple times in a week, for me, high demand,
Yeah.
right? And so you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah.
What puts fuel in the tank? What takes it out of the tank? And if I have a lot of activity stacked next to each other that's taking
Yeah.
it out, I'm this fifth rhythm is out of whack.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop there and let you
Yeah.
process.
Well, I have a question because some of the things that take the most energy from me also somehow are really good for me, like speaking, for example.
Mhm.
So, any pastor knows that by Sunday afternoon, you feel like you just finished the baton death march. You're
Yes.
the trail of tears. You just feel so exhausted. But a 4 or 5 hour conversation with a friend would be energizing. A 4 or 5 conversation with a room full of friends is exhausting. But
Yes.
I'm so excited about it, but it takes everything out of me. Help me understand the
Yeah.
difference there.
So you've just kind of nailed it. Just because you look forward to it and you're good at it and you love it doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's not high demand.
Okay. All right.
High demand is not just stuff we don't like dealing with.
Okay. Right.
So I love teaching.
Yeah.
It's one of my highest gifts,
Yeah.
but it still takes a ton out of me.
Yeah.
And I think we've had this simplistic view of, well, if it's something I don't like, then it's it's
Gotcha.
it's taxing my capacity. That's an easy one for one relationship that I can do. Like, and I in
Yeah.
my head, here's where I get into trouble, is where I stack a lot of things I love to do on top of each other, and I don't account for the fact that even though I love it, it
Right.
is draining.
Right. Okay. All right. I get it. So I go fishing for 12 hours. I'm refreshed. I go teaching for 12 hours. I need 2 days to recover from
That's right.
from that. Yeah.
100%. And so
Yeah.
this is what makes this fifth rhythm tough, you know. And so what I'd like us to agree on, hopefully we can agree on this, that not
Yeah.
all tasks and work hours are created equal
Yeah.
in terms of their demand on our capacity.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then with that in mind, um, I'd like to talk about maybe a way for us to get our arms around this fifth
Yeah.
rhythm. This fifth rhythm, let me just say this. I'm always getting my arm around this fifth one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I got this knocked out. I don't even have, I can't,
Yeah.
I can't go on autopilot with this one, Jim. This is something I have to pay attention to on a regular
Yeah.
basis. So let's talk about maybe three key things here. The
Yeah.
first one is with this fifth rhythm is it starts with trust,
Okay.
trusting that God will provide.
Okay.
And let me go a little deeper with that thought that God will take our responsible efforts and turn them into something impactful.
Yeah.
I think I have to be irresponsible. Sometimes I think I have to be irresponsible in my effort in order to be impactful.
Yeah.
I think God has a different equation there. He will take my responsible efforts and use those to produce good fruit.
Yeah.
And here's what that protects me from pride.
Yeah.
Like, look how hard I worked and look at what
Right.
I've accomplished. No,
Right.
it's, hey, I worked hard, but it was responsible. You can
Yeah.
work hard and be responsible at the same
Yeah.
time. And look what God did with that effort. It's
Yeah.
we've talked about this a lot. It's like God lets us help him cut the lawn.
Yeah.
Um, like when my kids were two, my boys were 2 years old, they all want to cut the lawn with daddy. And so
Yeah.
they would put their hands on the bar and I would walk behind them and it slowed me down. It took
Yeah.
3 times as long to cut the lawn.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
so excited that they got to help daddy.
Yeah.
You know, Jim, what you and I do,
Yeah.
we're helping daddy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's good.
like that. And
Yeah.
so it really begs this question, what do responsible efforts and trust look like?
Yeah.
And again, I think this is going to be a bit different. The answer to that question is going to be a bit different for every leader. But let me share what it means for me.
Yeah.
And then I'd love for you to give me some feedback. So for me, it means avoiding multiple long hour days in a row.
Okay.
Now, I get it. Sometimes those happen and it's out of your control.
Right.
But I have to work hard, Jim, to make sure that that's the exception
Right.
and not the rule. When I put in a 16-hour day now, I feel it for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was 20, I could put 4 16-hour days in a row together.
Yeah.
It was irresponsible back then, but I had enough youthful
Yeah.
energy to mask the irresponsibility of that, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yep.
Um, so that's the first thing for me. Secondly, it means getting wiser about what I'm going to commit to and how much time I'm going to commit to them.
Yeah.
I'm being very careful this year, Jim, about what I say yes to in
Yeah.
terms of speaking, in terms of coaching. And
Yeah.
it's not because I don't want to say yes to all of it. It's
Right.
because I have a responsibility to steward this
Yeah.
part of my world. And the people who invite me to speak are not responsible to steward that for me. I
Right.
must steward that.
Yeah.
So so there's that. Third is for me is being thoughtful about travel. I have a news flash for our younger leaders. Traveling on an airplane gets less fun the older you get.
Remember, it was so glamorous, though. You got to fly
Yeah.
somewhere and be in a hotel and speak somewhere, and yeah.
Yeah, it's just harder. And
Oh,
I had a stretch last fall where I was traveling by air much more than normal. And it took a lot more out of me than I realized.
yeah.
In the moment, I didn't realize what was happening to my capacity. It was
Yeah.
shrinking rapidly.
Yeah.
Here's two more, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. So
Yeah.
this is me. Here's what responsible efforts look like for me. I'm refusing to descend into workaholic mode when challenges arise.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
organizationally, when you have a challenge, when something happens that's hard or unexpected or that you weren't accounting for, or something you were planning on happening and it's not happening, my default is to
Yeah.
say, I got to work harder.
I need to
I
fix
got
this.
I
Yeah.
got to fix it. I got to
Yeah.
make up for this. I got to
Yeah.
find more of whatever more is.
Yeah.
And then I start to then extend hours and extend days. And
Yeah.
pretty soon I'm working week after week, month after month, way too long in
Yeah.
the quest to I'm gonna make this up. I
Yeah.
feel responsible. So I'm gonna whatever it is.
Yeah.
And for a pastor, it could be our giving's down.
Yeah.
So I'm shouldering that.
Yeah.
I am gonna make this happen. And maybe that's the root of it, Jim. I'm
Yeah.
gonna make this happen. Look,
Yeah.
I think you'd be shocked if God pulled back the cover and you could
Yeah.
actually see like he sees. I think we would all be shocked at how little we can do,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I
That
agree.
and
Yeah.
so refusing to become a workaholic in those seasons when organizationally we're being challenged, that's responsible behavior
Yeah.
for me, responsible effort. And then reminding myself, here's the last piece is reminding myself every day, God, this isn't my baby.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah.
So that's what they look like for me. I don't know if you have any thoughts. And I went a long way there before I gave you a shot to
Yeah.
speak
No, I'm
more,
listening.
but
I'm learning. Well,
I'd love
it's
to hear
funny because
from you.
I think everybody listening has had the experience you're talking about where I did something I loved. Why am I so tired?
Mhm.
But then we know after tired, like Noor said, I was so exhausted that I got my PhD. Yeah, I was so exhausted that I went on a date. Like, but you were so exhausted that we stopped functioning properly. And
Right.
it that to me the part that's a little counterintuitive is I love to travel, I love new challenges, I love to speak, and it's kind of a famous story when I'm teaching on this somewhere. I had two services on Sunday, did a 3 hour seminar on Monday, got on a plane Tuesday, had a late night dinner with somebody in Montana, taught 3 hours that morning, spoke at the church that night. So now I'm up to two,
Yeah.
five, six, well, no, six, eight. I'm like nine times now, in a handful of days. Moved time zones again to Idaho. Um, got resettled in another place, staying with a family I had never met before, all the niceties, and you know what I mean? And then spoke twice. And then I remember it was like earlier the next week, I made it back to Michigan. I spoken 11 times in between Sundays, Sundays included, and got back.
I remember that week
Yeah, I remember
for
you
you.
says, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just tired. I don't know why." Remember that? Like, I don't. I'm just
I
so
do.
tired. I don't know why. And you said, "Well, what you been doing?" And I told you. And about halfway through, I realized, A, I know what's wrong now, and B, I'm telling the wrong person, like the worst person on the planet to confess this to. It was an explanation that became a confession to Father John. And you gave me a few Hail Marys and a nap, and it was good. But I think that's it doesn't make sense until somebody explains it to you, and then we all nod our heads and
Yeah,
say that's why I've experienced.
that's right.
Going from the wedding and the funeral and the family reunion and the holidays and the New Year's Eve service and the Christmas Eve and the why am I so tired? It's like, well, it's because you're spending capital
That's
emotionally,
right.
physically, and spiritually. But it's not as easy to budget as our hours or our dollars because it's almost intangible. You have to know
That's
yourself
right.
well enough to know what puts something in your tank and what takes stuff out of your tank. And just because it's good doesn't mean it didn't cost you something.
That's right. And boy, that's one of the messages I really want all of our listeners and watchers to get today. Just because you love
Yeah.
something doesn't mean you're not expending energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That whether you love something or you don't isn't the measure.
Yeah.
It's learning, okay, when I do this,
Yeah.
this takes a lot of energy from me, even if I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And being smart about how many of this you are
Yeah.
doing in any given week.
Yeah.
Um, super important.
Yeah.
I think because this is hard to get this rhythm is really hard to get our arms around. I'd like to talk as
Yeah.
we kind of wrap up here, Jim, about some
Yeah.
warning signs that the
Good.
demand is exceeding your capacity. How
Right.
do
So
I
these
know?
are yellow lights on our
Yes,
dashboard, right? These
that's
aren't
right.
red lights yet, but these are your tires low, something's wrong with your oil pressure, yellow light
I'm going to
warnings.
say these are orange.
Okay. All right. Almost red. Yeah.
Yes. Let me just give them to you here. Heightened irritability.
Hmm.
If your spouse is saying you're crabby,
Yeah.
pay attention.
Yeah.
That that's probably an indicator that you're exerting past capacity.
Yeah.
Sleep disturbance. And that sleep disturbance can happen in two ways: insomnia, which I think a lot of us have familiarity with,
Yeah.
or hypersomnia, which is the other
Yeah.
extreme where I can't get out of bed. I don't want to get out of
Yeah.
bed. Um, here's another warning sign, and this one I think is a red light, not a yellow light. This third one, the first four rhythms, the daily rhythm, weekly rhythm, quarterly rhythm, annual rhythm, are not delivering the refreshing they used to.
Yeah. There you go.
That's a red light.
Yeah.
That means, man, something is wrong. These normal rhythms, these first four, they should deliver relief. They should deliver energy to you.
Yeah.
And when they're not delivering it to you anymore, you're in a spot.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
here's a fourth one. Your calendar is empty in relationship to friendship
Hmm.
appointments.
Yeah.
Now we're going to take the next pod,
Yeah.
225, and we're going to talk about this friendship piece at length. And I think the title is called The Ubiquitous Need for Friendship or something like that. I can't remember the title right now. But these indicators are they're yellow, orange, one of them's red,
Yeah.
that your demand is exceeding your capacity.
Right.
And so I know this one's harder. This is one that I feel like I have to work on a regular
Yeah.
basis. I have to be wise. And as a matter of fact, I think this one I need help with. It's hard for me, Jim, to self-regulate this one.
Yeah.
I need some people in my life who know me well enough that will I can take what's on my plate and put it in front of them and they'll say, John, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you
Because I
doing?
care about you. Yeah.
That's
Because I
right.
love you. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, your spouse can be a real help to you there,
Yes. Yeah.
and some close friends. But I'd love you to just, here's what I'm not saying today. I'm not saying the first four rhythms don't matter. They do
Right.
matter. Please be diligent with them.
Yeah.
I'm just asking you to consider a fifth rhythm today, that your capacity and the demands on that capacity is something that will help you if you pay close attention to that.
Yeah.
And if you need help with that, invite somebody into your world. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a coach,
Yeah.
somebody to help you get your arms around this fifth rhythm, which I think is the hardest of the five
Yeah.
to figure out.
It's funny. I think if you're say scripturally, do we see this? I would say everywhere.
Hmm.
Everywhere. We see this everywhere, right? We see Jesus very publicly and very privately monitoring whatever this is called. Whatever
Yeah,
this balance we're discussing is. We see those who get it wrong, the Elijahs. You know what I mean? That they're like everything's bad, everything's wrong. Like, well, yesterday was a great day. Tomorrow, what's going on? Well, something broke.
yeah,
Something went beyond what he had
yeah,
access to, and now what's left is a very defeated, very negative person that knows that what he's saying to God isn't even true. He's talking to God and he knows it's not true. I'm the only one and nobody else, and he knows it's not true. So
yeah.
I think again, you've really struck a chord here that managing this, even though it's not mathematically dollars or chronologically
Right.
hours, it's something else that's crucial. And I do appreciate you showing us where the lights are on the dashboard. That might be an indicator um, of changing that. I think this is another thing too, John, that just to be aware of. Maybe you can speak to this too. Is that the day I discover it, I can't necessarily fix it because I've already got 14 appointments in the next 3 days that are going to take
That's right.
more out of this. So I let pain be a teacher to us. Is that, I mean,
Mm,
what, like, if I
agreed.
just discovered today that my yellow lights, I got three of them on, right now. And but it's this season I'm in. When things go back to normal, it's just, I got to work hard. So I don't, all this
Mm,
stuff you lie to yourself about to make you feel good about the fact you haven't
yeah.
changed the oil in 30,000 miles. Could you just kind of talk to that person before we go?
Yes.
That feels like they might be an exception to this rule, or life. It just I got a young family. I'm working a secular job. I'm trying to
Hmm.
get my church off the ground. I'm trying to, as
Yep.
if for a season, it's almost noble or necessary to break the rules, the laws of our own body, soul, and spirit. Could you just
Yeah.
speak to that person?
I would say several things. I would say first of all, this is a long-term play. Um,
Yeah,
and you got to keep that in mind that you're not going to be able to turn this ship abruptly
yeah,
unless you slam into the wall of depression, then you will be forced to do it abruptly.
yeah,
You won't have any
right,
choice.
yeah,
But let's assume for a minute you're not going to slam into that wall. It's a long-term play.
yeah,
I find it interesting that leaders would never think it was right to disobey the other nine commandments, but this one I can disobey it
yeah,
and not pay price. And the truth of the
yeah,
matter is, you will pay a price.
yeah,
Um, so if you're a bivocational, you need to get creative here.
yeah,
I understand. I was bivocational for a while. I get that. It it is super challenging. And so finding Sabbath moments, maybe, just to
yeah,
get rolling. You might not be able to get a full 24-hour Sabbath.
yeah.
Hey, if you can get a 6-hour Sabbath just to get rolling,
Right, right.
start where do what you can to try to work your way towards something instead of saying, I can't do it because I can't get a full 24 hours. I can't do any. I don't
Right.
believe that's true
I
at
agree.
all. And and I get it. You know, if you're bivocational, you got young kids, man, everybody in the world wants something from you.
Yeah.
And just because it's hard doesn't mean you should put it on a shelf. I would submit
Yeah.
to you that there is always going to be something clamoring for your time, for your energy, no matter what stage of life you're in. And,
Yeah.
you know, we raised
Yeah.
four kids. We have four boys pastoring a church. I was, you know, there was so much going on in our world. And I didn't know any of the stuff we're talking about.
Right.
But if I look back on those years, could I have found time to carve out? Yes, I could have. I could have done that. And we did.
Yes.
You know, like we had this lady in our church, Jim, best Christmas present ever. She said, for Christmas this year, Pastor and Laura, I'm going to babysit your boys every week for a year. It was like,
Wow.
what?
Four boys. What a courageous soul. What'd you say her phone
I,
number was, John? I think a lot of
yes,
our listeners are
I
like
don't
that.
know if she's still with us or not, but I
Yeah.
hope so. Just a
Wow.
wonderful person. She had raised three boys, so she got boys.
Right
And
on.
I'm not saying my boys were thrilled about it, but Laura and I were
Yeah.
thrilled about it.
Yeah.
And so we
Yeah.
were able to carve out time.
Right.
And so yeah,
Mm.
I want you to be, you know, go back to pod 223. I want you to be
Yeah.
kind to yourself about this.
Right. Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up. Nothing is gained by beating yourself up.
No, doesn't
But
help.
let's take small steps toward this.
Yeah.
Small steps towards um, this fifth rhythm or the other four if you're struggling with the other four. But at some point, God is, here's what I think is going to happen. God is going to knock on your door and say, I'm not giving you wiggle room anymore.
Yeah.
This is so important. This is so serious.
Yeah.
I'm so serious about this that I am going to force this issue with you.
Yeah. That's good.
And no longer am I, you know, there are some things that we work our way towards, Jim, obedience wise. And there are other things where the obedience has to be full immediately.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pretend I know what God's going to talk to you about in those arenas.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I want to encourage you, take small steps, work toward this, make
Yeah.
progress with it. At some point, you know, you'll find a good rhythm and be able to do this. Um,
Yes.
but be advised that God has the right at any time to jump into the middle of whatever you're trying and say,
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've had those moments. I'm pretty sure you have too.
I'm pretty sure I have too. Yeah. I saw something this years ago when Jesus Take the Wheel was a big song, you know,
Yeah.
and somebody said, I don't need you to take the wheel. I said, I need you to pull over the car, take off your flip flop and start beating some of your kids. Because it wasn't, you know, we weren't giving him the wheel. We needed a spanking,
Yeah.
not a co-pilot, if you will. Yeah. John, thank you for this. This is again just the insight. I think we can all tell when something's wrong, but we don't often know what to do about it or why it's wrong. And I think the
Yeah.
last two pods, that's been that negative self-talk, and then today talking about really putting a governor on the condition of your soul to focus on quality is more important than quantity being more important.
Correct.
That
Yes.
it's the better investments rather than 1,000 small ones that are insignificant. Do 10 that are awesome, and
Mhm.
make sure one of those is your own soul. So thank you very much. I know that spouses are grateful for your ministry. I know that families are grateful for your ministry. Churches are grateful for your ministry. So let me just join our audience by saying thanks for being you. Thanks for being honest and teaching us what you know. So, as always, guys, if there's anything we can do to help you with this, because sometimes this is sufficient. Word to the wise is sufficient, but I'll confess that I'm not always wise. Sometimes
Mm.
I need someone to take off their flip flop and spank me with it to get me to see what is obvious to others around me. So, at convergecoach.com, contact us. Resources are
Mm.
there. The services that are provided. We're just here to help. that is our goal. This is not a, this is free of charge, obviously. So we're here to give this away to you. And if it's not sufficient, then know that we'll take another step with you, and multiple steps, depends on what you need. And so uh, make sure you take advantage of that. It is for you, and it's wonderfully generously given by Converge Coaching, and it's a great asset to many. So in the meantime, it's Tuesday. You haven't quit, which means we're proud of you. Thank you so much for your obedience, being good, and being faithful in the things that God has called you to. So go back and get them another week. This is your week to serve the Lord and put these things into practice as you continue to lead from alignment.